Well, the embargoes have started dropping, and that means we're looking at a crazy final push towards the release date for Warhammer 3. Absurd amounts of content on the way. You're going to see everything you need to see and more before February 17th. I'm having a blast with the game so far. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but there are tons of quality of life improvements, some really entertaining campaign gameplay, a bunch of it maybe somewhat overtuned, a bunch of new features we'll discuss in depth as we get closer to launch, and it is a spectacle. It is straight up majestic at times, which I think the video yesterday did a decent job of showcasing. So if you looked at the title and thought this would be a hyper-negative doomsaying video, it's not, or at least it's not the intent. There is one big element of the coming combined campaign, though, that has me concerned, worried, fearing for the very fabric of the universe and all life in it. So I want to broach the topic now, so we can get a dialogue going if, for some reason, Creative Assembly hasn't considered or has otherwise already internally turned down the proposition for one reason or another. Because if they've turned that down, it's something I think they need to change. My biggest concern with the Immortal Empires combined campaign for Game 3 is not about map cuts, it's not about performance or turn times or how long it might take them to scrap it all together, and it might be months before we ever see it. It's about circumnavigation, being able to go east to get to the west, or go west to get to the east. Now let me make it very clear, the combined campaign for Warhammer 3 is not going to be a globe. It's not going to simulate a globe. It will look like a Mercator projection, as all the other maps in this series have looked like. But that presents a serious challenge when it comes to forging this final map, because it will be even more expansive, even more gigantic than Mortal Empires in Game 2, which is already one of the biggest grand strategy maps of all time. And Mortal Empires is the big draw here, right? Combining all three games is why this series is as popular as it is right now. The exclusive campaign in Warhammer 3 is awesome, it's fun as hell, but it's narrative driven, and it's simply less of a sandbox, which means it misses out on some of the appeal for people who like to play at their own pace and do whatever the hell they want. There are steps you have to take to progress, which is ultimately why it will be less popular. Same as the Great Vortex map, where the factions that could ignore the race and those objectives ended up being better received in the long run. So yeah, just like the Vortex map, I'll probably play through this thing fully maybe 3 or 4 times tops, and then the rest of my campaign time will be spent on that combined map as soon as it becomes available. That will likely be the case for the majority of players. So my big fear is that without some significant map changes and without a teleport mechanic that simulates navies sailing across the Great Ocean, then the Game 3 map will fail at allowing much of this new content to interact with the old, thereby rendering quite a few campaign experiences somewhat obsolete. And that's simply a product of geography and distance. I mean, realistically, a faction like Cathay, or the Ogre Kingdoms, or the Chaos Dwarfs, will never, ever, ever interact with a place like Lustria or Ulthuan. They're simply too far away. It would take 300 turns to get to Nagaron from Wei Jin by going west, and 90% of players can barely make it past turn 100. Now you might be thinking to yourself, that's not a huge deal. There's tons of variety in their section of the world anyway. But in my opinion, it's a huge deal because the point of combining the campaign, the point of Mortal Empires, is to make it a cohesive, world-spanning experience. And a gigantic part of that is being able to trade, communicate with, and conquer every other empire on that expansive map. Your options for expanding, and thereby your replayability, are severely hampered as someone like Zhao Ming or Miao Ying when you're tucked into a corner of the world and can only move westwards. It will be a similar opening every single time. Same enemies, same regions, same strategy, same line of thought. But as soon as a shipping lane opens up on the eastern and western edge of the world and allows armies to sail in between those points, then reappear on the other side of the map in, say, 3 or 4 turns, then suddenly the entire game opens up. Those start positions become much more interesting and replayability skyrockets into the next dimension. Dark Elf Raiders and Black Arcs can raid the Cathayan coastline. You can plunge into the heart of Lustria by turn 50 with the Iron Dragon. You could sack the western coast of Nagaroth as recompense for Druchii shenanigans. And the same is true if you're the Lizardman, or Skrulk, or Lokir Felhart, who stands to benefit from this more than just about anyone. I mean, seriously, without a teleport mechanic that lets you go east to west, west to east, what is the point of playing Dark Elves or Lustria-bound Lizardmen in Warhammer 3? Their campaign would play out the exact same way as it does in Warhammer 2. Maybe a bit less so for Dark Elves, because at least they'd be able to interact with the Chaos Wastes and get invaded from the north now. But especially for Lizardmen, or Skrulk, or Marcus Wolfheart, Taurox, Sisters of Twilight, Morathi, any number of characters, those campaign experiences will hardly be different in Game 3 at all. You're still just artificially stuck in your little corner of the world, arbitrarily held there because the edge of the map said you had to be there. That is a big potential problem for Warhammer 3, if the content from Game 1 and Game 2 that gets ported over doesn't feel any different. And the reason I've been thinking about this so much recently is because of how the current Warhammer 3 map is set up. It's kind of a microcosm of the fact that Cathay was built perhaps a bit too small in the first place, that not enough of the Far East has actually been utilized. Frankly, I don't think it needed much more to start with, but the fact that there's no real water or ocean on the eastern edge to speak of at all naturally has me a bit worried. Now, I don't know how much they're going to be able to expand on that, if at all, and it's entirely possible they have big plans on that front once the Monkey King, the Fire Dragon, or the Sea Dragon show up. And of course, the combined map will be set up differently anyway. We don't know how it will look, but for now, it looks like a difficult region to expand on in Warhammer 3's exclusive map, and there's a decent chance Cathay will be even smaller in the combined campaign, simply because they need to fit in with all these other massive areas as well. That's what happened to Southern Lustria and the Southlands in Game 2. They got their wings clipped a lot. So for me, one of the most important elements of the combined campaign is that they leave a strip of ocean off the western coast of Lustria and Naggaroth, and off the eastern coast of Cathay and the Dragon Isles. And if we don't see that strip of ocean exist when the Game 3 map is fully unveiled, then I think that's a really bad sign for how the combined campaign will play for quite a few factions. Because I don't want to play a Warhammer 2 experience in Warhammer 3. I own Warhammer 2. I can go back to it any time. I've been there, I've done that. I should be able to invade Cathay with Taurox without having to spam end turn 150 times just to get over there. I should be able to take Mazda Mundi and attack the Darklands without having to march for 200 plus turns. The Game 3 map might not be a globe, but a teleport mechanic, like what the Wood Elves have, available to every single faction that simulates a navy crossing the ocean at a certain point, is the single biggest, most impactful change they could make to the combined campaign. It would open up the map and tactical variety in a massive way, and it would benefit everyone. There's not a single faction in Warhammer 3 that would not benefit from a mechanic like this one. And the blueprint for it is it already exists for quite a few factions, including Khorne with their cultist teleporting. So implementation should not be that difficult. But let me know, what are your biggest hopes and concerns for Mortal Empires? What are you hoping to see out of the combined campaign? And which faction are you planning to conquer the world with first when it finally drops for Total War Warhammer 3? I'll leave you guys with a bit of a cinematic fly-through of this Cathayan vs. Ogre siege, and I hope you guys enjoyed. See you all in the next video. Indie Pride, signing out for now.